And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades and Grey. Thank you for joining us. Today, I welcome Francine Kaye to the 50 Shades and Grey podcast. So Francine is the author of The Divorce Doctor. It's a guide to divorcing with dignity and a relationship coach with 25 years experience. She works with individuals and couples. She's been the relationship expert on The Wright Stuff and The Trish Show, and is frequently called upon by the BBC and nationwide radio to provide expert commentary on high profile relationships. So welcome, Francine. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so looking forward to this.
So myself and Francine, we met a few weeks ago, didn't we? We did a podcast that's coming out for Best Magazine soon called Recently Single. So you can see us both on that. And we really hit it off, and Francine said she'd listened to this show, which was a huge compliment to me. And so I said to her, I'd love you to come on. And here you are.
Here I am in all my glory. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So what I thought we'd do, Francine, is my last podcast was based around the stigma about being single, about the attitude of, why can't you find yourself a man? Why can't you find yourself a woman? And I said, there's a strength in being single. So in contrast to that, what I thought would be a really good conversation for us, because obviously your expertise is around relationships, either staying together or deciding to go their separate ways. So for a lot of the audience, I'd like to go through, if they are in a relationship now where they find it's become a bit stale, they may be not as happy as they were. They may be experiencing some problems within that relationship, if it's marital problems or just relationship problems. What signs would you say they can, for them to go through the exit door or decide, there's something here worth fighting for?
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I start off my whole book with that chapter about should I stay or should I leave? And I think that you start to feel a disconnection. And sometimes the other person has disconnected even before you have. But at some point, it's going to creep up on you that there's a disconnection here. And then in that disconnection, you start realizing that some of your needs aren't being met, that he or she is behaving in a certain way. And the more you focus on that, the wider the gap becomes. And then you start realizing, I don't feel as alive as I did. And now at that point, if there's going to be any mileage in the relationship, now a discussion has to take place. But very often it doesn't. So what generally happens is you start seeing the other person's faults, the ways that they aren't meeting your needs, all of the irritations and judgments about them, and you start seeing them through very different eyes. So instead of seeing them as, let me think of a name, instead of seeing them as Tom, you don't see your man as Tom anymore. And he's not seeing, let's say my name, Francine, not seeing Francine anymore. What we're seeing is a projection on them of everything that is uncomfortable for us. And the more we see them through that lens, the wider the gap becomes. And disconnection is totally the killer of relationships. Now, a few things happen at this stage. I just want to preface everything with, if somebody's being abusive in any way, in any of its forms, this is something very different. If there is verbal abuse, if there is physical abuse, if there is abuse in any way, we're probably going to call it a day, because you're still there and you shouldn't be. But in cases where you've been, together for a couple of years, and now perhaps you've got children, or the children have grown and you're getting bored and you start to really see, do I really want this? At that point where there's a conversation to be had, many people don't have it. And for some reason, it's because they don't really know what it is that they do want. So they're not going to get rid of what they've got until they know what they really do want. So there's like a transition period. This is the period where people will have affairs.
Yeah.
So this is the period where they'll go out and have an affairs. For a woman, if I take, a combination of clients that I've had, If a woman has an affair, basically what she's looking to feel is an aliveness in her femininity. What she's looking for is that man who brings back that feeling of seeing her, experiencing her, desiring her, and it's fresh. And he's seeing her now. So he's not been through any particular thing with her, but he's evoking that energy, which is so dead in her relationship. For a man, it would probably be, I think it's about, you can tell me if I'm wrong, criticism, judgment, never being fully appreciated, not being in some way respected for who they are. Kind of like, go on, well, you were going to say something there. What were
No,
you going to say?
to be honest, I think I think they're the things that they'll cite as annoying. You know, they'll get in from work and it's like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And they might cite those as reasons, but I don't think the actual reasons of affairs are any different of that of a woman. I think my own personal opinion on it from experience, and I do need to add at this point that I haven't got the greatest experience of long-term relationships. So, but my experience on those is from commentary from friends, sort of watching my friends' relationships, and they're all still together and they've got great relationships, but watching the journeys that they've been on. And I think a lot of the time it's the same for guys, that when they've had affairs, it's been to fill the void that they're not, those things that they're missing in the relationship. And I think, you know, women are the same. I think it's they want to be made to feel sexy again.
Yes, and alive. They want that energy again that was there probably at the beginning of the relationship, but through so many layers of domesticity, of just familiarity, maybe family challenges, health challenges, financial. I mean, everything that gets piled on what was an incredibly romantic situation. And that you're then, with this person who doesn't bring out, that aliveness as much anymore. You're in a relationship. And how do you then go from that place and judge whether or not there's enough in the relationship to keep you together? So in that period, some people would have an affair, other people won't. The affair itself is not because you don't love necessarily the other person. It's, as you say, to have that same energetic feeling of aliveness that's missing from the relationship. If that happens, or even if it doesn't happen, and hopefully in many cases it doesn't happen, there's just a general drift, it has to be a conversation. It has to be. The worst thing about cheating, and the reason why it's so difficult to come back from it afterwards, is that you don't give the other person a choice. So if I go off and I have an affair because there's not enough aliveness in our relationship, and I come back and we decide that we do want to make a go of it, the challenge for you is that I did something behind your back. I didn't come to you, and nobody ever does, and say to you, look, Elliot, things aren't great at the moment. I'm really not happy. I'm just on the verge of sleeping with this bloke at work. I think we should talk about it. Who does that? I've not really come across anyone who does that.
No, and I think if that would be a conversation that would be probably, I would say, from my perspective, detrimental anyway, because I think, my personal view on that would probably be, well, if that's something you feel like you need to do, maybe you need to go and do it. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be your defense. Yeah, that would be your reactive defense to protect yourself and to well, if you don't want me, I don't want you either. But so you perhaps wouldn't say that, but you would say, I'm not happy. I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to just, we'd throw in the towel and we haven't done enough work to figure out what's going on, because there has to be a part of you that has recognized this. So at that point, if you can come to somebody like me, what I do at that point is I look at the relationship and I do something very different with it. I say to you, okay, when he disappoints you and you're not getting what it is that you need, is that a new story for you? Is that a need that you hope that you would always get met because it wasn't met, or it was always met and he's letting you down, and vice versa? Is this judgment or criticism that you experience with a new story? Or is this old? Is this something that you've experienced before, way back then? And you've now stacked enough evidence that this is what it's like. So what I'm doing is I'm letting them know that they may not necessarily be seeing the person who they're married to or they're in relationship with. What they're now experiencing is, you don't meet my needs in a way that my needs were never met. And I'm not going through this again. At that point, if we can understand how we're projecting onto the other person needs that we hoped our beloved would meet, because after all, I chose this person, I didn't pitch up in a family with them, and now you're disappointing me in the same way that they did. If I can unpack that and let them see that they're not actually even seeing each other, they're seeing a projection of what they never wanted to experience ever again, we can start a very, very different conversation. Because when you are pulling back from me and withholding love because I'm criticizing and judging you, but when you do that to me, I feel rejected, I feel abandoned, just like my father made me feel. When I criticize and I judge you, you're back in the kitchen with your mother who raised a very high bar and you could never get it right, never please. So underneath the conflicts, I would stick my neck out. I mean, I've been doing this, as I said, for nearly 25 years.
Yeah.
I would stick my neck out and say that when a couple are in conflict, they've never even met each other. What they're in conflict is with old needs that didn't get met and is being projected onto the other person.
Yeah, I'm not. I understand where you're coming from with that. For me, I think modern day. I think relationships have changed modern day. I think because of the way there's a need for people to have children. So we meet at very early stages in our lives when we don't actually know ourselves. And this is my personal take on why a lot of relationships don't work. And then stereotypically, it's the woman that stays at home. It's the man that goes to work. They have no real concept of each other's jobs whatsoever. So the man doesn't understand what it is to raise children. It's a full-time, bloody hard job to do it. And the woman doesn't understand the man's role in going to she may see him going out for dinner with clients, but in his head, he's got to go out with 3 other boring guys that he doesn't want to listen to, but he desperately needs their business. So it's something that he's got to do and drink until 11 o'clock. So we all see things from different points of view. But I think because of the way there's this need to have, and completely understandable because of biological clocks, to have children, sort of people don't want to have children when they're in their late 30s, which I now think is a great time to have kids because you get to know yourselves more. But obviously women, and with how the bodies work, they want children, I would say late 20s, probably early 30s. And then they're at home for the next 10 years if they decide to do that. The guy's out to work. And then by the time they actually meet again, like you say, when the kids have gone, they're different people because they've changed so much from each other. And then during that time, both of them are so tired because the woman's tired, or the guy, if he's staying at home, is absolutely shattered because they're looking after the kids all day, going to bed. So they don't look at their best all the time. When you first meet people, you know what it's like. They're coming round, I better put on something nice, I'm going to do my hair. But it gets to that stage where they're coming home and they've got baby sick on them, whether it's the guy or the girl, and I'm too tired to do anything tonight. And I think for me, that's a lot of it. And that's only a personal perspective. I don't always find myself in my relationships looking back at what happened. And it could be subconscious, like you say in your book, maybe a lot of it. But I don't find that. But I think the way that the relationships are traditionally, I think it's so different now. And I think it needs to change. I mean, I said this the other day, women are having sort of children later on in life. So I think if you took, looking back at your life, if you took the biological clock out of your life, what age would you have chose to have kids?
Well, I waited quite a while in terms of my age group because really my ex-husband did not want to have children. So we were married for over 4 years, and obviously been in a relationship before that. So I was 30 and 31, 29 and 31 when I had my children. So I was a late starter in
I
terms
think they're
of
still
what it
really
would
young
mean.
in terms of
And
it,
it is in terms of not, as you say, not knowing who you are. And I'll also loop back because you said, like the woman stays at home. Well, they don't. And this is the problem with the way that life is now. The young couples that I see, virtually all of the women are working too. So
yeah,
now what happens is you have the children, and for a while you can stay at home, your maternity leave or whatever, but then you're juggling your work and then you're coming home. You've got to pick the child up from wherever it is. You come home, you're doing all of that. And there is a kind of then as a woman, you've been touched and held and you've been pulled in every single direction. By the time the evening comes, you don't want to be touched anymore.
huh,
You don't even you haven't even got the strength to that. It would be like somebody else that needs you in some way. See, what most women what they would really love is to come home to a really nice wife who's at home
yeah,
making a lovely home. But most women these days don't get an opportunity to do that. Maybe in the upper echelons of society, yes, but most women don't get the opportunity to do that. So, and that is, and you've pointed out something very important, that is where most of the challenges in relationships with couples begins. So it's that whole romance at the beginning. Oh yes, and let's start a family. We'll have a family. And as you know, as you said, nobody really knows each other that much. So they've been through their honeymoon period. Sometimes the children are still part of that honeymoon period,
yeah,
of how wonderful this is going to be. And we have a lovely home and it'll be joyful. And then what happens is you don't sleep. The kid doesn't sleep. There's maybe some health issues with yourself or with the child, God forbid. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Then he's really working hard because he wants to protect the family. So he has to have those drinks with the boring guys because otherwise he might lose the contract.
yeah,
So he's
exactly.
got to go and do that. And she's then at home and he's not available. So now she's been at work all day, picked the kid up from childcare, come home, and she's had to do everything else. She's asleep by the time he gets home, or even if she's awake, it's like, I'm going to bed. So you've got this transition period, which no one really explains to a couple what the hell that's going to be like. And even if they do, nobody knows what it's like to not sleep for like six
Yeah.
nights in a row and longer, or the kid that's being sick all the time or something. So nobody really knows until that happens. How's that romantic? How is that making intimacy attractive? So that's where the work really has to begin, because it's a time when, if you understand how to handle each other, if you understand this man, what he really loves, a couple just recently, but I want to be snuggled and I want to be held. And she's like, I snuggle and hold the children. I don't even want to hear you say that because it is the least sexy sounding phrase I have ever heard.
I was thinking that when you said it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Say that to me, come and grab me from behind, or I'm in the kitchen and just like, I don't know, push me against the wall or something and have a hug, or whatever. Now you're a man.
Yeah.
But I do not want you to be an extension of a child in any way, except for the guy is feeling, where's mine? Where's my love? Where's my affection? I love the children, but they're depleting you. So that's a whole period by itself. And the work that needs to be done in that is, how can I understand when I say that I want the snuggles and the cuddles, for example, that turns you off completely, and I still want it? What's a different way of being able to have that with you that would work for you, and when? And it's a whole conversation about not exactly the logistics, but what it means to me, what you make me experience, what I'm making you experience and feel. Does that make any sense?
It does. I did wonder with marriage in particular. I had an idea that I ran past some of my friends that they thought was madness. That when people get married, I think it should be a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract, a bit like footballers, really, so that you
Yes.
know that if you're getting near the end of that contract, you kind of need to start making an effort if you want to renew that contract again, or otherwise you could get to the end of it and people just go, yeah, I'm done with this. Because I think it's that it's sometimes contentment can breed laziness as well, can't it? You don't make the effort anymore. You don't sort of put on nice clothes or whatever it may be that the other person used to find attractive about you. You kind of stop doing it. Guys get a bit lazy. Maybe they stop working out, going to the gym, keeping in shape. And I think if you had that sort of window deadline end of a contract, they might either go, well, I'm done, in which case the other person's far better off getting it out after 2 years, or they might be like, I need to step up my game here because I've only got 6 months left on this contract and I don't want her to go anywhere, or I don't want him to go anywhere.
I mean, I have thought of that in the past. There's a couple of things that spring to mind with that. Is that I'll say the first one that's just come to my mind, which is the challenge with that is that you take yourself with you wherever you go. So people are like climbing Machu Picchu to try to find themselves. They may as well go to Starbucks. They'd be there. It's like, I am where I am who I am. Whatever irritates me, whatever needs I felt haven't got met, literally whatever really upsets me in one relationship, if I don't crack it, if I don't stay long enough to understand how that works, I'm going to repeat it in another relationship. And I'm going to find myself, it looks like it's a different person. It looks like a completely different context and everything. What is it after a few months? I end up, it almost is like it's the same person all over again in a different outfit. How is it I keep on choosing the same person over and over again? So if you had a contract that ended after a couple of years or 5 years or something like that, that would be great. But the problem is that you would probably go and repeat exactly the same irritations in the next relationship. And then you'd have to end it again after 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm not saying that longevity in relationship is the key to nirvana.
No.
I'm not saying that. It used to be, we've got to 50 years. How amazing are you? No, I'm not saying that is the truth. I'm actually also saying that there are times in relationships where they are complete, where they've done everything they were supposed to do.
Yeah, I agree.
You've gotten together, you had the children, you built the business, you've got the home, you've been on the holidays, and now you are completely different people. So, which is another point, which is in relationship, if you do last the course like a long, long time, you're going to be about 4 or 5 different people in that relationship. You are not the same person that you were before you had the children, just after you had them, when you renewed your career, when there was a financial or health issue. You keep changing. You keep growing.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to grow with the person you're with? Or are you going to keep on throwing in the towel and then repeating it all? Because I can promise you, I'm in the slow learners group. I mean, I've been doing this work for 25 years, and it took me 3 lots of relationship to see the repetition in its oh my God, to absolute clarity about what I choose and who I am and the role I play within these relationships to create it the way that it ends up. So there's such a lot in what you just said. There's such a lot in there. Probably such a lot in what I just said as well. But this is a complex conversation.
Oh, it is. I think for me, through the relationships that I've had, though, I haven't found myself with the same sort of person. I've found myself with different people in terms of I've kind of realised traits that don't suit my traits. So I'm
You
quite.
haven't found, you've found yourself with different people, but what you've done, the people are different. None of them were there back in your past. So the people are all different. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with the other person. It's to do with what comes up in you with all of the people. And different things come up with different people, but there's generally an overriding umbrella statement almost that comes up with all of them, which is things like, for a woman, I don't have a voice. For a man, I'm not respected and valued for who I am. Another one is a freedom and independence. Another one is security and safety. So I don't feel secure and safe with you. Or I find one where if I'm the other type, no, you're too controlling for me. I don't feel like I've got my autonomy and independence.
But if you're,
So
but I understand what you mean. But if you're always like you say, if you're always meeting people where you find the same thing, like you say, like you're always controlling for me. If you keep meeting the same people or different people, and you keep coming back to you're too controlling for me, you're dating the same sort of people anyway. Because I think for me,
yes.
people bring out different characteristics in you. It's like, you know, they're either a rock or a beach sometimes, and you're the ocean. So you're either going to crash against it, or you're just going to slowly slide over the sand and it'll be lovely and gentle. So if people keep meeting rocks, they're going to keep crashing against them.
Yes. Now, why would they keep on meeting rocks? Why
I don't
would
know.
people keep on meeting rocks? So this is the fun part. So the reason, and this is the whole purpose of relationship, as far as I'm concerned, with all the studying and the research and everything that I've done over the years. The reason you would find another rock, the reason that you would find somebody who wasn't going to be quite right for you and bring out those feelings is because the purpose of relationship is to complete childhood. So I'm going to come up against in you something that doesn't work for me in quite a painful way. If I can recognize that in me and get it over to you, that when you do that, I experience this. And the other person is, really? Do you? Well, you know what? And when you pull away from me, here's what I experience. Okay. So now I've got the opportunity with my partner. It's like I'm going to choose my nemesis. I'm going to choose the very worst person for me who's going to be my razor's edge of growth. He's going to put me right on the edge for me to experience all of the things that I've never really wanted to experience because I'm a grown-up now. And whereas I didn't have a choice as a kid about what I could do about it, now I can have a conversation about it. Now I can work on what it is that's going on inside me. I can explain it to you. It's not your job to heal it. You didn't inflict it in the first place. My job is to be able to express it to you at the same time, knowing where it comes from for me. So I'm doing quite a bit of work here. I'm owning my own trigger reaction to you, which is that you're avoiding me, you're pulling away from me, you're making me feel rejected. I know that that is because that's what happened when I was growing up, and it happened with a man, and you're a man, and I'm experiencing that, and I'm able to say to you, you know, when you don't answer me when I speak to you and I ask you something several times, I feel like you're just ignoring me. And you say, well, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just working out what the right thing to say is, you know, that won't cause you any kind of upset or conflict or whatever. You know, it's a dangerous situation for me sometimes with you. Really? Now I understand that that's what you experienced. You're not trying to upset me in any way, shape or form. You're just reacting in a way that comes from you. Now we can get on an adult bridge of conversation.
But do you not find that a lot of like what you say there, I think goes back to sort of the last podcast that I was talking about, was a lot of people haven't spent enough time on their own to actually get to know themselves anyway, because they've always relied, they you know, those people, they need to be in a relationship. So they've always relied on the other person to make them happy without spending enough time on their own to realise what makes you happy. what things that you need from someone because they've never sat with themselves long enough. And also there's an age element to it. Meeting people as you get older is very different to meeting people when you're younger, because they're easier to have those conversations when you're older, because you kind of get to the stage where you think, well, this is me. You're either going to take it or
lose. Yeah.
Yeah, you're taking it or leaving it, but I'm just going to put it all out on the table. Where when you're when you're in your 20s, you still don't know yourself well enough. You still haven't got that confidence yet of which is why I've said as well, from 36 onwards, I think were great years, because that's when you really start to get to know yourself. You're still sort of young. You can still get away with being young at 36, but you're still confident enough to go, this is me, and that you don't have that up until.
There's so much in what you just said, because you can get to know yourself on your own, but you will never be triggered until you're back in relationship again. If I go off on a bit of a woo-woo, a relationship can be very much a spiritual path as well. Because what you're doing is, as you've said, the return journey to yourself. So there you are on your own. You go to your retreats, you sit in an ashram, you sit on a cushion and and you do all of that stuff to get to know yourself. You may even go for psychedelics and God knows what else there might happen to be, to see if you can really expand your consciousness. But the challenge with that is that you're doing that on your own. Now, that's lovely. Being single, lovely. I can sit and hold the television controls the whole night. I don't even have to. And I find myself holding them. It's crazy. So there's so many things you can do when you're single, which are absolutely great fun and lovely. But you are not going to grow yourself. You're not really going to grow yourself exponentially until you're in a relationship. Because all of the things that you find out about yourself, I like this, but I don't like that. I prefer this, and that really turns me off completely. And I never want to do that. And you can do that on your own. And all of those things that I now know about me, because I've spent 2 years, maybe during COVID, sort of examining my navel or whatever it is. I've been doing all of that. But then I go and I'm now ready to get into a relationship. I'm going to take it very slowly, tentatively. I'm not rushing in there. And I get in and I start doing it. Then I come up against all the bits that I've spent those years saying, here's what I like and what I don't like. And I see them in you. Okay, you're no good. I go on to the next one. And it's like there's a buffet out there anyway on a dating site. Well, it's literally a buffet.
Yeah, that's what dating sites are. And I think that sort of takes us nicely into the last thing that you mentioned to me about when we were doing the podcast about the 3 months. And you said to me, what is it about the 3 months? And what it is about the 3 months is that's about the amount of time. Because I've found that when I was sort of dating at that time, that a lot of them, like I said to you, they'd get to 3 months and then you'd both decide, or one of you would decide that you're not really for each other and you go away. Because the amount of time that you actually spend with a person over a week when you first start dating is probably a couple of hours. So the first week is like 2 hours. You might see them a little bit more the second week, but probably not. So by the time you get to 3 months, you don't, you've only started to scratch the surface, but you've scratched the surface enough to start seeing them. Actually, our morals don't line up here. Like we're different people. You're a lovely person. I'm okay, but we're just not the same. And that's due to time. And I think that happens in a lot of relationships when people are younger as well. Before they know it, they're living with each other and they're financially involved, and then they've got kids. And now then they, like you said before, now they start to get to know each other. And then it's kind of not too late, but you realise that you're completely different people. But now you've got all this other sort of committed stuff as well. You've got kids together, and you don't want to split up from the kids because you want to be an ideal family.
But who's not different? We're all different.
Yeah.
We are going to be with different. Everybody is different. What the trick about it, I don't know, the realness of it is, in what way are you different? And can my difference and your difference get along?
Work
Can
together.
we join those differences together? Or am I going to go, no, you're too different. That's it. Next one, please. Because you can do that. Of course you can do that for as long as you want to do that. But it depends what you want. If you want to declare yourself a serial dater, knock yourself out. Go and have fun
Yeah.
and enjoy yourself. But if you're somebody who would ultimately like to, in whatever way you design it, I mean, if I was ever in a relationship again, I would never live with the person. I would still take my holidays with my daughter as much as I wanted. And it would be a very, very different type of relationship. I don't need to have any more children. I couldn't anyway. And so it's a completely different relationship. So the design of it isn't the problem. So after that 3 months and you look and you see the differences, am I interested in that? Because she brings an awful lot of fun into it.
Yeah.
Not particularly intellectual. She doesn't stimulate my brain that much, but she's lots of fun. Is that something that I could enjoy a whole lot more? Because sometimes I get in my head quite a bit. Maybe I could design the relationship. I don't get all my happiness just from one person. That's too big an ask. Hundreds of years ago, women never even imagined they would get emotional support from their husbands. It's too big an ask. You need a lot of people in your life. Your partner provides your emotional stability. If you've got particular morals, it's the one place that you have your intimacy. It's your companionship, it's your friendship. But I have a friend who I do art with. I have a friend who I, go to the pub with. I have a friend who's a confidant and another one I wouldn't tell one secret to.
But maybe that's an interesting point, Francine, that people look at relationships as just being two people. But maybe a relationship of two people actually works where 20 people are involved in it. It's a bit like a film. You're the two stars, you're the male and the female, or the male and the male lead, whichever your orientation. But you do need a supporting cast. You need those people that are going to provide extra scenes here and there and a bit of variety to what you're watching. Because otherwise the film just becomes bloody boring and no one wants to watch that.
Very boring. And you've seen two men shows at the theatre, and the only reason that they really work is because they're talking about so many of the other people that are in their lives and how that's intertwined. If they just were sitting on the stage having a conversation with each other, it would be like going to watch the film The Titanic and it never sunk. It'd be like watching a cruise. So it's, So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a different way now of looking at relationships. If they're going to have longevity, if they're going to have, even for the amount of time before they get to completion, I mean, just before they get there, how can we come together and have each other be each other's growth partner in a way, not just, the romance and the babies and the home and all of that. How can we grow together? Is there something in here that's an enhancement to our lives for however long it lasts?
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's hope for everyone. There is hope for. Listen, Francine,
There's hope for everyone.
I've loved having you on today, and I could talk to you for ages about this, and love to have you back again. But I just want to say thank you for joining 50 Shades and Grey today, guys. You can still get Francine's book. It's The Divorce Doctor. It's still on shelves. You can go and get it. It's a great read. I've started to read it myself, Francine. I've been marking pages on it. There's some of the things I'm not complete. There's some of the things I'm not completely in line with. We need to update a few things, but we can go.
Definitely updating. And people can also get in touch with me via my website as well. So they can go to www.francineKaye.com, and so they can look at my stuff.
That'd be great, and I'll put all your links on there as well. So guys, once again, thank you for following 50 Shades of Grey. Make sure you follow and subscribe, because we can then develop the show, and we can make it more interesting and give you the stuff you want. So send us messages about what you want to hear a guy talk about with whichever guest that you think would be relevant to your lives. But thank you again, thank you, Francine, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Elliot. It's been fun. Thank you.